So today, we're diving into a really provocative theory about the Book of Acts. What if it's not just a straightforward history, but actually a deliberate work of literary genius? One that was crafted to solve a huge crisis in the early church. This whole idea comes from a scholar named David Trobisch, and honestly, it might just change the way you read the New Testament.
You know, the story we usually get is one of partnership, right? You've got Peter, the rock, and Paul, the great missionary, two massive pillars holding up one single faith. But what if the original sources, Paul's own letters, tell a completely different story? A story of, well, sharp disagreement, of public showdowns, and maybe even outright rivalry. That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the rivalry itself. Then, we'll hunt for the clues, the cracks, in their own letters. From there, we're going to see how the book of Acts swoops in as this masterful reconciler, using an amazing technique called miraculous parallelism. And finally, we'll get to the big question. Is Acts pure history, or is it a carefully crafted theological masterpiece?
Okay, let's start with what we all kind of know. The traditional picture of the early church, it's pretty much built on the leadership of Peter and Paul. I mean, you can't talk about early Christianity without talking about these two guys. They are, without a doubt, the most influential figures.
And boy, they could not be more different. On one hand, you've got Peter, the total insider, right? He was an eyewitness, part of Jesus' inner circle, the head honcho of the original apostles back in Jerusalem. And then there's Paul. He's the outsider, a former persecutor of Christians who has this wild conversion and becomes the self-proclaimed apostle to the non-Jews, the Gentiles. Just their backgrounds alone are setting the stage for two very, very different ways of seeing the future of the faith.
Now this is where it gets really juicy. The evidence for a serious split between them, it doesn't come from some historian writing centuries later. No, it comes directly from Paul himself. It's preserved in his letters, which, are some of the absolute earliest Christian documents we have.
Whoa, just let that sink in. This is an absolutely stunning statement. This is not some polite debate behind closed doors. Paul says he confronted Peter, the leader of the Jerusalem church, publicly, to his face. He's basically accusing him of hypocrisy, saying he was self-condemned. This is like a five-alarm fire in the early church. So, what on earth was it about?
Well, it wasn't some personal squabble. It was about the very soul of this new faith. The whole explosion in Antioch happened over one question. Did non-Jewish converts have to follow Jewish laws, like keeping kosher? See, Peter had been eating with the Gentiles, no problem. But when a more conservative group from Jerusalem showed up, he backed away. To Paul, this was a massive, public betrayal of the gospel message, and he was not going to let it slide.
And it was